Stop putting responsibility for your happiness, your joy, and your well-being in the hands of other people. It's Valentine's Day soon. It's the month of Valentine's Day. And so today I want to talk about you identifying and taking responsibility for filling yourself up. And we're going to continue this conversation in different ways throughout the month. I want to talk about you giving yourself permission also, and what happens when we give ourselves permission. And I'll offer up some examples soon. When we give ourselves permission, what that does is give the other people permission as well, a new joyful possibility for themselves and their lives. So like Valentine's Day, hate Valentine's Day, honestly doesn't matter to me. I'm not a fan. I don't like prescribed holidays of any sort, but some of you do love it, and I think that's worthy of celebration. So I want you to, be you, of course. But what this sparks for me above all is something that I have certainly had to learn for myself and practice for myself. Like it was so important for me. And it's something that I continue to see in my work show up. And this is how, as women, not only women, but here we're talking primarily to midlife women and about midlife women, what we do often is we outsource our well-being, even our value. Like it's like we put it in each other's hands and we say, am I good enough today? Am I worthy? Do you see me? You know, am I good enough now? Like, and we do this in so many ways and it hurts us. It's harmful. So I want to use Valentine's Day just as an example. But I encourage you to think about what I'm going to share today for yourself. And again, whether or not you love Valentine's Day is beside the point. I want you to think of other examples in your life and to see where you're outsourcing your worthiness. So think about special days because this is really a sticky point for people. So could be Valentine's, it could be your birthday, it could be Christmas, it could be Mother's Day, Father's Day. Like some of these things are so raw and tender. And they can be devastating. They can feel devastating if we wait for other people to make sure we feel loved and people don't meet our needs in the way that we want or expect. And what that usually means is that we've created an imaginary ideal or we've looked outside of ourselves. So maybe we've looked to Hallmark movies, maybe we've looked to Instagram, maybe we've read novels, and real life doesn't align with that an ideal that we have built up for ourselves, and then it can be crushing. So think about a tender but meaningful event or holiday in the year for you. Again, Valentine's Day, your birthday, whatever. And I want you to really get clear for yourself. What do you love about that day? How do you want to celebrate that day? Now, there may be a tendency to automatically picture your children showering you with praise or your partner, I don't know, just creating this sort of romantic experience, or your friends meeting your needs in a particular way. Now, the truth is, we can't control for other people. So I want you to actually think about you, what it is that you most want and need, independent of other people. How do you want to spend that day or that week or experience that holiday? How would you like to fill yourself up? How would you like to take care of yourself? Now, this is worth considering, even if you really do want other people involved, first you need to imagine how can you meet your needs. And by the way, one of the actual points of suffering around days like Valentine's Day is that we don't even articulate to ourselves what it is that we most want or need. There's just this sort of elusive sense that it's supposed to be a particular way. And so, no matter what the people in your life do, it might never be enough. It might never fill that hole, that need for love or being valued or being witnessed or being filled up. So, first, this is your responsibility, yours alone, because nobody else can actually fill us up in a way that, if we don't believe we're worthy. We can invite others into our lives, but they can't do the work for us. And so I'm going to say a little bit more about that shortly. So, first, here, the invitation here and the challenge is imagine the day or the week, because I'm a big fan, for example, of celebrating birthday weeks. I don't just celebrate a day. For Christmas, we celebrate at least a week, or even when my kids were younger, a month. So we make it this a larger sort of experience. And the reason is that then we don't put such a heavy weight on one day, on 24 hours of a whole year. And that actually is an example of making peace with messiness to make space for joy, because you can't control for every single circumstance or day. Like, what if something happens and you're sick that day? What if a plan is disrupted? What if you put all your hopes and dreams on 24 hours and then, and honestly, you have to sleep some of those hours. And then, I don't know, just something doesn't pan out, right? This is an example of how we can set ourselves up for success. And by success, I mean like joy, freedom and joy. And we can enjoy our lives and we can experience delight and we can, if we choose, invite others into what we want, and but we don't put such pressure on one person, one experience, one day, one moment. We spread out the love, okay? So imagine for yourself. So think about your birthday, think about Valentine's, think about a Mother's Day or Father's Day coming. Think about your expectations and maybe past experiences. What worked well, what didn't, and why? And I honestly really I really believe this. This isn't trivial. This is an example of a place that women outsource their agency and well-being over and over again, right? So this is an example, but if you'll do the work for this, for this exercise that I'm offering you, there will be spillover effect in your life. What are your expectations and where have they come from? So I think it's really important to truth tell around this. Where does that imaginary ideal come from? And is it even honest or practical or real life? Can you notice how this imaginary ideal is creating suffering for you and maybe even disconnect with other people? So, for example, let's say that at Mother's Day, actually, a lot of you aren't parents, so let's choose a birthday. Let's imagine your birthday, and let's say that you have these expectations that came from somewhere, and you notice how maybe they're even unspoken, right? You've never even communicated these to the people within your circle. But what happens is there's this unspoken expectation People aren't meeting your needs in the way that you imagine, and now you harbor hurt and resentment, disconnection. Now, it's bewildering to other people because they might not know what's happening, but they might sense it or feel that, and also just not know what to do about it. Maybe they actually are oblivious to it while you're feeling the pain. So, what is the expectation? Where does it come from? Are you sure that's something that true self actually cares about in this season? Also valuable to consider because you're not the person of 20 years ago or 10 years ago, right? You've grown and healed and become, and yet we can hold on to these old ideals, these old ideas. So examine, is this even true to who you are today? Do you want to carry this expectation forward? Is it serving you? Is it serving your relationships? What else is possible? So do this type of examination. And now imagine a new possibility. I'm not going to hold you to this. This is an exercise, a practice, but just consider the upcoming holiday, whatever it is, or special day, your birthday, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, whatever. Imagine something new. Let your brain imagine, let your mind imagine. Think about how you want to feel in your body and life that day. How can you allow yourself to feel that way, independent of other people first? Really go there. What could you do? How could you speak to yourself? How could you take care of yourself? How could you fill yourself up? What would be fun? What could you give yourself permission to feel, be, do, experience, or receive that day or that week? Write it down, brainstorm. What could that look like? And if your mind and heart try to keep pulling you back into that old story, that old ideal, or that old expectation, walk away for a bit if you want, shake it out, just, go for a walk, do something, and then come on back. But don't allow your brain to tell you the story that this is all there is and nothing else is good enough. If you're living in an old story, you're actually limiting yourself from joy. You're limiting yourself. You're holding yourself back from something even more beautiful. So, what do you actually want, need, or enjoy? You need to choose for yourself first. You need to articulate that to yourself first. Or else, remember, I already said this, I'm going to say it again, or else, no matter what, nobody else in your life could ever meet that need in you. You need to stop putting your happiness, your joy, your worthiness in someone else's hands. Okay, so first, examine the old stories, the old expectations, where that comes from, whether or not it's actually something that you even want. Does it align with true self today? Now picture a new possibility for that meaningful holiday or event or day. And imagine first you filling yourself up. Brainstorm a list of ideas. What would feel joyful, meaningful, kind, loving, respectful, honoring? Generate that list of ideas. And only once you've actually been willing to spend time in those two parts, now part three is if you want to invite somebody else into your dream or your plan to take care of yourself, Who would that be and why? And now think about what are the steps that that would allow you to invite them into your dream, but in a way that is different from before. So, in a way where there's clarity, you know what you want and why. You know why you want them to be a part of it, but also clarity around your expectations on that person. So, we're not going to resolve this all in like 10 minutes, right? But this is a starting point to heal a place where we so commonly outsource. We put our well-being in the hands of other people. We give away our agency. So, what are you hoping to receive from them? Do you just want a partner, like comradeship, partnership, friendship? Or are you looking for them to heal a wound in you? Are you looking for them to resolve a question? Am I lovable? Am I doing a good enough job? Am I worthy? Do I deserve love even though I'm imperfect and messy? What are you hoping to receive from them? Now remember that if you have an expectation on them and it's unspoken, so it's unclear to you, and then it's unspoken to the other person, you're setting yourself up and them for disconnection. So imagine or decide that you're going to do your best to release them from any expectation unless you're willing to speak it out loud to them. If you're willing to have the conversation and lay it out, what comes up for you? That's really challenging, right? Because how vulnerable to say, this is my hope, this is what I want to experience. Would you would you join me in this? Could you be a part of this? And be very clear. That's really vulnerable, right? But if you're not willing to be vulnerable, then you need to release that expectation because it's not that a desire is wrong. It's that you're setting yourself up for hurt. You have to own what you want and need. And then, if appropriate, and if you're in a place where you're willing to communicate this to that other person, now you might be able to create a new possibility while also inviting them into your joy, into your plan. So I'll give you an example or two. For my birthday, I personally, for the most part, I do like to be remembered. I like when my kids even send me a text. I really do like that. But I know that even if they forgot, or there's been some times where they were not okay, they were emotionally going through their own stuff and they didn't remember me on that day. But I work at remembering that doesn't destabilize me, right? That's about their experience and them taking care of their own needs right now. That's not about me. But I plan out my birthday week. I don't have a high need for other people, so for the most part, I actually make it about me and me, celebrating my life, doing my own life visioning work, etc., doing kind things for myself. But I will generally have at least one day where I, talk to my husband about this is what I would like to do. And we do this with each other and for each other. I think about, do I want to go out for supper or what do I want to eat and whatever, whatever. And then we have this conversation together. I don't leave it up to him to come up with what might she like, you know? How am I going to make her feel loved or special? That's just way too much pressure on somebody else, even when we've been married for decades. We don't live in each other's brains and hearts. And it's actually unfair to put that on somebody else. Okay, I'm going to say that again. My husband and I have been together for, I think, 33 years. And I would still never expect him to know what's going on in my brain and heart. If there's a desire, a want, a need, and I want to invite him into that, then I need to communicate it clearly, like clearly. And now we can be in connection. But even then, by the way, I'm still not putting the responsibility for my happiness in his hands. I don't give that to somebody else, right? That's your job. Your job is to love yourself so deeply, to be on your own side so consistently that you're in relationship with other people, but you're not outsourcing your sense of self and your worthiness. You're deeply rooted. Okay, so I'm going to move on. If you want to let me know your thoughts and feelings about this, send me an email. Come over to my website, go to my contact page, send me an email, join my Hope Map, my weekly email, and you can always reply from there. All right, so I want to move on to giving ourselves permission. So what we were just talking about, filling ourselves up and really taking responsibility on these holidays, whether they're arbitrary and like I do not care about Valentine's Day. It means nothing to me. Okay? But some of you love it. I love my birthday. I love that. Um, and so taking responsibility for this, doing this type of examination and taking real ownership for what it is that we want and need, how we want to feel, that is a form of giving ourselves permission. Permission to love who we are, to really be on our own side. In a world that might seem to actually, like even the holidays, like they are very commercial and all of that, whatever. But like I mean, I'm not even saying this is intentional, but if we're really looking to the movies, the media, the social media, etc., for a sense of, oh, this is what it should look like, then we're also outsourcing, choice in our own lives for like what life we want our lives to look like. Okay, this is a side note, and then I'm going to move on. But years ago, probably on this podcast, I shared how years ago, so I was homeschooling at the time, and I would be reading books about homeschooling and whatever. And there was this picture painted of these homeschool families, like, and the guy was like chopping logs, and then like there was all the family was sitting around this roaring fire, and they're, with their coziness and reading together and blah blah blah, whatever. And our family was different. And we read together, and there was a lot of beauty, and that's the point. There was a lot of beauty, but my husband was not chopping logs and reading with us. My husband was coaching and reffing sports, and he was teaching in a classroom and whatever. And so, but what happened in that season was I started to feel like, oh, what we have is not good enough. It should be different. And, thank goodness, I was able to notice what was happening, that I was allowing someone else's either real life or imaginary life to inform my level of satisfaction and how I viewed my very real family and life and marriage. And I saw the disconnect that was happening because I was buying into an imaginary story. And I was able then to take ownership for this and recognize all this is doing is I'm not, instead of focusing on all the beauty and all the strength and all the love that is very real, real and present in this messy, imperfect, beautiful life, I was I was ignoring it and dismissing it and devaluing the beauty because it wasn't this other thing. Okay, so it this happens really quickly and it happens frequently in our lives in a world where we're so connected to, social media 24/7. And so yeah, okay. So in the past though, I didn't have social media at that season of my life, but I still had like magazines, I still had books. And so the same thing was still happening. Anyway, all right. So we need to really tell the truth about what it is that we want and need for our lives, and then take ownership for figuring that shit out and taking back the power of choice, the power for our well-being. Okay, let's talk about permission. So sometimes in my work, women will say, "Oh, I just feel a sense of permission today." And what happens when we give ourselves permission and I'll give you some examples, but let's just say to love ourselves well as we are today. It also gives other people permission. It, we give them a model, an example, or we give them safety in that relationship to also choose for themselves. So here's another example. Like and this has been real in my life, as I've practiced naming boundaries for myself, communicating and honoring boundaries in my relationships, that has given other people permission to do the same for themselves. Now, we could argue that really no one else needs to give you permission. You need to give yourself permission, right? But this is how we grow and become in relationship and in community. It's like we're always pinging off of each other. There really is nothing that is 100% independent of other people. But my freedom gives you freedom. Our freedom is tangled up with each other. So, yes, ultimately, we want to come into a position and a relationship with ourselves where we're not looking to other people for permission. But if we're honest, I think there's always times where we're scanning and we're looking for examples of possibility. And when we see somebody else living in a way that we desire, then it does, in a sense, it gives us permission to also claim that which we want or need. So, so I'm going to offer you up these just a few examples of permission that you might want to give yourself. Okay, permission to love the body you're in. So I've been noticing online I don't know if this is true or not, this is what I'm seeing, that people are now saying, oh, we're back to skinny now. So I did see this, that, in social media land, there was sort of a movement these past years of embracing bodies of all sizes, embracing our curves, embracing being different sizes and shapes and just loving the bodies we're in. I thought that was really beautiful. And now apparently the fad is back to skinny is better. What the heck? Listen, we don't need a fad to tell us to love the bodies we're in, to celebrate, to be in gratitude for these bodies that carry us through the highs and the lows of life. And we can celebrate the bodies we're in as we age. And this is a big thing, right? So as we age, our bodies start changing again. And one of the things that honestly, it's kind of horrendous, but In my younger years, I hated my body. I just lived with body shame. I loathed my body. It was never good enough. I walked with a limp. I don't know, just even looking back and I'm like, "Hun, like you were fine. There was nothing wrong with you." But I just always felt that. And then media just perpetuated that. And thank goodness I was able, 20 years ago to step over a line where I made a no bullying policy for my life. And I decided, and part of that in that moment was I would no longer bully or berate myself. That included my body. No more. And then I needed to practice. And I don't live with that anymore. So thank goodness, because anyway, my whole point was that we can spend 80 to 90% of our waking hours distracted by hating our bodies. And and I think that's sad. I really think that's sad. Like it's a waste of our life. It's a waste of our gifting. And there is an incredible freedom and liberation if we just say, like, if we just tell the truth about what we think is, like, let's, like, for anyway, yeah, I don't want to go there, but just we can tell the truth. So we can identify, like, oh, okay, here's an example, like, yeah, I have stretch marks. Um, and okay, and also I still choose to love and embrace my body. Or my neck is changing and it's really showing age right now, just in the last year especially, just like whew, it started changing rapidly. And I can see that and I can tell the truth about having some feelings of discomfort around that. And also say, and also here I am, like doing work I love, taking responsibility for my life, loving the body I'm in, etc. So we can do both. But ultimately, I want us to stop wasting our lives hating our bodies and put all of that energy and attention into giving ourselves permission to thrive, to flourish, to express ourselves, etc. We have permission to care for our needs, to rest, to play, to say no, to turn off social media. We have permission to let go of relationships that they're misaligned with our values and to grieve those relationships or the loss of those relationships. We have permission to love who we are today and also to love who we are today and also still have goals and dreams, or to also acknowledge places of wounding. We have permission, or we can give ourselves permission to be messy, take risks, do things imperfectly and at our own pace, and not quit. This is something that comes up for me a lot, is that and so this exact example may not relate to you in your life, but this is what I have for you. So I was even this podcast I've shared before, like I knew for years I wanted a podcast and it wasn't time because I was in deep grief and trying to climb my way out of PTSD. So, but then I wasn't perfectly healed, all healed, but I knew it was time. I could say yes to this thing I wanted to do, the podcast. But it was going to be so imperfect because the truth is, like, we're all having to decide, like, how do we use the energy, the capacity, the attention that we have, right? And we're dividing that between different things in our life that are meaningful. So the podcast was one thing in many. And even today in year three, where this year in 2026, I really want to dedicate more energy to the podcast. I want to make it better. I want to improve my own skills. I want to just invest more of my attention. And I knew that, but then all month January, I was struggling. I was struggling with my brain and with the light, the lack of light through winter, low energy, low capacity, etc. And so, I'm just always noticing that there's always this tension between the ideal and the reality. So this is just one example where Just because I'm not able to show up in the way that the experts say I ought to, it doesn't mean I have to quit. Because I care about it and I know why I care about it, I get to keep showing up messily, imperfectly, but on purpose. And I get to keep honoring my pace. Because if I don't give myself permission to honor my pace, I will quit. And many of us quit things that we love or that we enjoy or that feel meaningful because they're so, less than perfect. But there is so much middle ground, and we can give ourselves permission to keep showing up imperfectly but on purpose, even when it's hard on us sometimes, or our egos, even when we wish that we could show up more consistently or differently. We can give ourselves permission to set a boundary, be proud of ourselves, celebrate small steps, jump off the hamster wheel. And in every case, what we're doing when we give ourselves permission is we're opening ourselves up to a new joyful possibility. Instead of living with so much angst, anxiety, pressure, or urgency, we can let go of that. We might have to let go of it 18 times a day and feel this sense of greater room to breathe, lightness, hope, joy, glimmers of joy amid the imperfection of life. And when we give ourselves permission, we're also giving each other permission at the same time.